Thank you, Bruce. For those who I haven't had the opportunity to meet, I'm Chad Dyer. I'm Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at Vail Resorts. The company I own, Mountain News, was acquired by Vail Resorts 5 years ago, and I've been blessed with the opportunity to continue to operate the business and to develop within the company as a leader. I founded the digital media division of Mountain News in 1993, and over the subsequent 17 years, grew the business domestically and in Europe, which ultimately led to a strategic acquisition in 2010. But the honeymoon soon ended. I stepped into the situation, I think looking excited about the next opportunity in my professional life. And of course, for an entrepreneur, selling your business to a publicly traded company is like hitting the jackpot. A while after, my boss said to me, Chad, you've got a lot of subject matter expertise, and you had some great success building your business. But this can no longer be about you. My expectations, the company's expectations, are that you'll begin to find success through others, and you'll build a high-performing team. Coming out of that, our annual employee engagement survey scores came out. And let's just say my team, they weren't impressed with my leadership either. My boss came back to me, and he said, hey, Chad, I've seen a lot of companies get acquired. And it's very rare that the owner or the founder can make the transition into the new environment. And I'm sure you can recognize that we're going to need to assess if you're the right guy. Maybe you're more suited for sales or leaving and doing another startup. That's right. I think proving to myself that I could operate on a bigger scale in a bigger sandbox was important to me. And only a short time had passed, and due to deficiencies in my leadership, I faced a very real possibility that I'd get replaced in a business that I'd spent 17 years building. Vail Resorts it's an organization that values feedback, and if you seek it out, you're very likely to receive it, and even if you're not seeking it out, you're going to receive it. And some of the feedback that I was receiving was I was distant, self-absorbed, unrealistic, positive to a fault, a micromanager, interested more in my own success than the success of my team. And that was the positive feedback. But seriously, coming from an environment where I own my own business and I didn't seek out, nor did I receive feedback, and stepping into an environment where it flows from a fire hose was enlightening, to say the least. And in case this isn't already apparent, this isn't a story about how a big company acquired my company and gave me a hard time. I had very real deficiencies that had gone unchecked for a long time. This is a story about my leadership, or lack of, and how I needed to own that. And I come from an entrepreneurial background, but the story I'll share today, I think, applies to anyone that's stepping into a leadership role. It shouldn't have taken 17 years to get there, but it was at that point in time, with my back against the wall, that I recognized that I needed to reimagine myself as a leader, finding success through others as opposed to continuing to be a superhero individual contributor. And it was apparent that the things that had made me successful in ultimately selling my business to be acquired weren't the same things that were going to make me successful in my new environment where leadership was valued. What it came down to is that I needed to reframe how I measured success, that I needed to recognize that my job was to be a leader, not the smartest or the most successful person in the room, that my job was to unlock the potential of my team. And in my case, I recognized I needed to move very quickly. And so I did a couple of things. The first is that I owned the feedback, because like most feedback you receive, there was truth in it. I gathered my team in the room, and I owned the feedback, a mea culpa of sorts, and I shared some of the underlying reasons as to why I show up the way I do. I pledged to those that in the room that I would begin to own and I would own my blind spots, that I would work hard to overcome them moving forward. I thanked those that had been candid. I asked for help in holding me accountable and calling me out. The second thing that I did was that I walked the leadership plank of finding success through others. My managerial style to that point is that virtually every decision in the global business that I operated flowed through me, and had been that way for a long time. At the same time, I felt overworked, didn't understand why others didn't seem to care about the results and the outcomes as much as I did. And for those of you who have made the hard journey from an individual contributor to a manager or a leader, you know all too well how terrifying it can be to hand over responsibility to others who you know are not going to be able to do it as well as you to start, but at the same time recognizing that the only way to develop them is to allow them to fail forward. Over the next few months, an interesting thing happened. More than a few people began to call me an authentic leader. And when I began this journey, I certainly didn't set out to be an authentic leader. I'd heard the term, but that was about it. But I'd done a couple of things that had fundamentally transformed how I showed up. The first is how I began to characterize myself began to match up with what others experienced when they interacted with me. It wasn't a rosy view, but it was honest, it was authentic, and over time it built trust and allowed for me to build more meaningful connections with those I interacted with. The second is I genuinely began to measure my own success by my ability to unlock the potential of others. And while to this day I still have setbacks and I'm far from reaching my maximum potential as a leader, others began to recognize that I view their success as my success. And to be clear, being authentic in your leadership doesn't make you a great leader, doesn't even make you a good leader. But it's table stakes, a necessary condition before you can truly begin your leadership journey. Developing the authentic self is an opportunity for all. Its impacts can be even more profound on your personal lives than your professional ones. And I urge you to seize the opportunity, and I'd like you to consider 3 steps to accelerate your own development. The first is become self-aware. Seek to understand how you're showing up, how you're presenting as a leader. And there are formal tools like 360s and performance management, or just asking those you engage with. Genuinely seek to understand, and you'll receive this valuable feedback. The second is own your blind spots. Self-awareness gives us the ability to characterize ourselves as others also see us. Sharing your story and the underlying reasons as to why you show up the way you do can allow you to make more meaningful connections with those you interact with. The third is Assessor Motivations. Do you genuinely have others in mind? Or are you most interested in the next promotion or a larger paycheck? Are you genuinely committed to measuring your own success through the success of others? So with that said, I'd like to say, thank you. And I want you to really look forward to, or excuse me, it's kind of an emotional story. Thank you very much.